think my only other task right now is to introduce Mark Janes. I think he's known to all of you as the voice of the Indy 500. He's the 6th radio voice of the Indy 500 in the past 64 years, which is an incredible amount of longevity for people in that position. And I'm sure he's going to stretch that 64 years out for quite a while. He's only one of 2 announcers to have worked in all 4 turn positions, served as a pit reporter and anchor. His radio range includes Formula One, NASCAR, MotoGP, Indy Lights, and of course, IndyCar. He has an interesting side gig going on, doing play-by-play and color commentary and reporting for the variety of high school sports at the Indiana High School Athletic Association Champions Network. He finished last year as the 2018 Sportscaster of the Year, an award that's given out by the Indiana Sports Writer and Sportscaster Association. He's an educator, has coached middle and high school sports, football, basketball, baseball, and he's taught communications at Beech Grove City Schools and Monrovia High School. We were just chatting. He lives in Speedway about 10 minutes away and usually bikes to the track during May. I'd like to introduce Mark Janes, who will then introduce our speakers. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, it's a short jaunt for us to get over here for sure. Really excited to be a part of this. Did one last year with Ari, and it was a lot of fun. So thanks to everyone for coming out today. Won't take up a lot of time. I want to get right to our featured guest. One of them, our first guest, 30-plus years now, and named synonymous with all forms of motorsports, one of the most successful owners ever in motorsports. Let's welcome Mr. Chip Ganassi, please. Just as successful every time he leads a lap, every podium finish. He's literally rewriting the record books. A legend for sure, a winner of this event, the Indianapolis 500, and a multiple series champion. Let's welcome Scott Dixon. Scott, we'll start with you. Mother Nature allow you to get much accomplished today?
Yeah, it was good. It's always good to be kicking off almost the month of May, even though it's still April. But to get out on the speedway, the engineers have a long off season. They have a lot of ideas and a lot of things to see if they can make work. And today is one of those days that you just try to, clarify and maybe get some information. But the conditions are very ideal for speed and lots of grip. So. You're kind of running around in conditions that maybe aren't too similar to what we'll see race day. But yeah, we got almost 2 hours, I think, practicing. And as you can see, they're just about to put the headlights on, I think, out there on some of those cars. And they'll run to almost 8 o'clock tonight. So yeah, it was a good day.
And obviously, been with this team a long time, a veteran crew, veteran owner. Obviously, you've dealt with days like this before. I mean, this is nothing new for your race team.
No, it's all part of it, right? I think that the weather is always the toughest thing, but you can't control anything, right? So you can't control that part of it. But as I said, it's just making sure that a lot of the things you can verify from the off season, make sure that the car's reliable, for coming out here. But I think today is more important for a lot of the rookies and maybe some of the veterans that get a refresher today. Which those are running now. I think there was a lot of cars that actually had to go through the ROP, the rookie orientation, and that's almost harder. I think you got to stay at that 205 mile an hour, then the 210, then the 215. It's actually very difficult, and the car doesn't feel very good at those speeds. You kind of want to be going flat out. You want to be loading it up, and with the high downforce.
The car doesn't feel good at those speeds.
Yeah, got to go faster.
It feels better when you go faster.
Well, Chip, I've theorized in the time that I've been around here, especially now being a resident of Speedway, it doesn't matter if it's the 100 Days Out party in February, if it's the light display in December. This is just an awfully special place, and regardless of when you're here or why you're here, it just always brings a smile to your face.
It really does. Being here at the museum, and I certainly appreciate everybody coming tonight. I remember the first time I walked in here was probably in the late 70s or something, and as a young kid, and here I find myself sitting up on the stage here tonight with a guy that's a winner of the race and a 5-time series champion. And it's just all so surreal sometimes to think, just yesterday I was walking over there as a 12-year-old kid looking at the cars and looking at the helmets and, just dreaming about speed and about cars. And it's a hell of a ground for sure.
When did you first become aware of this? When did you first develop an interest in this, and how did you develop an interest in not just the 500, but motorsports as a whole?
Well, actually, and some of you may have heard this story, I'm sure, but my father was in the asphalt paving business, and he paved a go-kart track in Pennsylvania. I'm from Pittsburgh, and the guy didn't pay him. I don't know why, but the next thing you know, we have 3 go-karts in our garage. And the steering wheel was this big, and I couldn't reach the pedals. So that was my first entree to it, and then in not soon after that, in 1963, he came to Indianapolis here for an equipment auction, and he came and took a tour of the track, rode the bus around, and brought home a Super 8 film of the race. They had an 8 millimeter film of the race, and we had one of those Bell and Howell cameras. Remember those? And you used to feed the film through the camera, and get it started. And I must have watched the 1963 Indy 500 at least 500 times. And and it's such a storybook thing then to meet Parnelli and become friends with him. And I in fact about 4 years ago I had my Thanksgiving dinner with him. And I was like 55 years old, and I thought, geez, here's somebody that when I was 5 years old, he won the Indianapolis 500. Here I'm sitting having my Thanksgiving dinner with him. It was just surreal. Yeah.
Scott, same question to you. Motorsports career, how did it begin? And then when did you first become aware of the Indianapolis 500 and its significance?
Family for me. My first memories are watching my dad in a garage, trying to work on something all during the week, late at night to, go race on the weekends. And then actually the transition, I don't know how it happened or why it happened, but my parents owned a speedway actually in Townsville, Australia. And I remember, just sort of cruising around on motorbikes. I first started on motorbikes for a little bit and then, watched dirt track racing. But it wasn't really until I got back to New Zealand at the age of 6 or 7, watched my cousins race go-karts, went out to a go-kart club, Mount Wellington Go-Kart Club, which actually just closed this year, and watched them, and they have like that have-a-go portion at the end of the day. And for me, it was just getting in this go-kart, feeling the speed. It was just amazing. As a 7-year-old, I'd never done anything close to that before. And I was hooked, and I was relentless, asking mum and dad if I could get a go-kart for 2 weeks, and sure enough, 2 or 3 weeks later, we had my first go-kart. We've been racing pretty much from that period on every weekend. And I don't know, that's some of my fondest memories of the go-kart track. You do a lot of racing as you go kind of up the row of ladders or up the ladders to this kind of form of racing. The racing almost becomes a smaller amount as far as on time or on track time to those days. But traveling around New Zealand and the South Island and racing those, and then moving to Australia to Formula cars, that whole ladder was, for me, it's just the competitiveness. That's my driver, and driving part is just trying to beat the competition, and it's been relentless ever since. But yeah, my parents, my family, my sisters, my brother raced a little bit too. They didn't really go anything past, go-karts. But for me, I'm glad it worked out, because I don't think I was really good at anything else.
It worked out okay.
So far, it's worked out. We're kind of sneaking up on it a bit, but yeah. But so far, it's worked out pretty good.
So when did you first become aware of the Indianapolis 500 and its significance?
Yeah, for me, I think coming from New Zealand, it's definitely more European-based. It growing up was following more, Grand Prix racing, Formula One. I think for me, the real hook was probably in the early to mid-90s when Mansell came over, saw that transition, and then just fell in love actually with oval racing, and just seeing how, diverse the drivers had to be in IndyCar and racing on a short track oval to a super speedway like the Indianapolis 500. But this race, I think, draws everybody, and the sheer size of it, the popularity, even before or around the same time of becoming in love with racing in general. Everybody knew what the Indy 500 was or how big a deal it was. And I remember always watching those alongside with Grand Prix, throughout those years. But for me, the first taste of it too, I think, I never actually came to an Indianapolis 500 race until 2002. When I joined Chip's team on the kart side. I came to as a guest, actually, of Chip's guest, and sat in the hospitality. And I never really got, the size of the speedway,
Right.
and just to see the amount of people. And I remember walking in race day and just being like, I really get it. Like, this place is so special. And I've been to Olympic Games, World Cups, Super Bowls, and nothing has a touch on this place.
Chip, let's talk a little about your career as a driver, and at what point during your career as a driver did ownership start to kind of enter into your mind?
Well, I was here in 1982 as a rookie. I graduated from college. I turned 23, and I qualified for the Indy 500 all in a 10-day period in 1982. And so May was a pretty exciting month for me that year. And so that's when I came here in 82 as a rookie. Had some great other drivers in my rookie class, Bobby Rahal, Danny Sullivan, Herm Johnson, Hector Rabake, a couple other guys I can't remember off the top of my head. But we had, I think there were 11 rookies that year in 82. And that was the year that Kogan had his problem at the start, if you remember. And I mean, I'll tell you, I was coming down to the start. I was nervous as hell because I qualified. I was the fastest rookie, so I'm like 11th. And so there I was in the middle of the fourth row, and I'm coming down to the start. And I'm going, boy, we seem like we're going awful slow here. And then I see these cars crashing, and then I see a yellow car come by me like backwards on my left. I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? And I'm thinking this thing isn't getting started. I don't think, And then of course I see the yellow, and they're going, yellow, yellow, slow down. So, I mean, I made it through there, and then the race started, and I settled in, had a great day. And so what was the second part? So,
Well, we were just going to,
Yeah.
you feel free to talk as long about your career as you want.
Oh, yeah,
Because
so-
I'm sure folks will want to know what it was like to drive for
so
AJ the year you made the start
so
for him.
82, I drove for a guy named Jack Rhodes out of Columbus, Indiana. And so Jack was a great guy. He was actually going to have Gordon Smiley drive for him, and Smiley stepped out of the car and went to drive for Lindsey Hopkins. And unfortunately, during qualifying in 1982 is when Gordon had his accident in turn 3, rest his soul. And but it was because of Gordon taking that seat that there was a seat available for me. And so I'll never forget that. So then 1983, I drove for Pat Patrick in 83 and 84. And then in 83, I was supposed to drive 6 races and end up driving 10 because both of my teammates got injured. Gordon Johncock here at Indianapolis, Rutherford here at Indianapolis, and Gordy got hurt at Michigan that year in Pat's Wildcats. Remember the last Wildcat, that big sort of boat-looking thing that wasn't very good, and so I just kept moving up from attrition, I guess, and so that was 83. Then 84, it was Johncock and I were teammates at Patrick, and I was driving the old Milwaukee car, and then had Old Milwaukee and STP were my sponsors, and had a great relationship with a guy named Ralph Salvino from STP. He was kind of Andy Granatelli's right-hand man, and he was from my hometown in Pittsburgh, and so he was a great mentor of mine, and still lives out on the West Coast today. That was 84, 83, 84. 85, I drove for Foyt here at the Speedway and at Michigan, and that was just an amazing event. My one story about driving for AJ Foyt, I'll tell you, is we during the month of May, all these sort of motor racing luminary come around, and so we're in the garage one day, and Richard Petty walked into our garage, and I was just kind of starstruck. I mean, I knew Richard, but I'd never seen him at Indianapolis, and we're in the garage area. This was the old garage area, the old wooden garages, and some girl came up and gave me a kiss in the garage, and Foyt looked at me and said, "Is that your girlfriend?" I said, "No, sir." I said, "I'm in the doghouse with my girlfriend." He said, "Shit," you know, Foyt talks. He said, "Shit, I'm in the doghouse so much when the neighbors come over," he said, "I don't know whether to smell their ass or shake their hand." So that was AJ. That's what I remember. But his car was really good to drive. I'll tell you that. That car was set up and it was easy to drive. And but that Foyt, he's a character. So that was 85, right? And then so then after the race, I said, "Hey," I said, "AJ, what do I do about the prize money? You know, you gonna just send it to me or what?" He said, "Why don't you just come down to Houston next week?" I said, "Okay, I'll come down to Houston." So I get in the plane and I go to Houston, Texas. I land at Hobby Airport, I remember, just a commercial flight down there, and I get a cab over to AJ Foyt Enterprises Racing. You know, I think I'll go to the race shop, right? So I go to the race shop, and there's Jack Starnes there. Jack was his guy. And I said, "Hey, Jack," and Jack called me Chipper. He goes, "Hey, Chipper, how you doing?" I said, "Good." I said, "Where's AJ?" He said, "AJ?" He said, "I don't know." He says, "He hasn't been here in 2 years." I said, "What?" "We're at the race shop." He said, "Well, go in and talk to the secretary and have her find him." You know, so she goes in and calls him on the phone, and he called me Yankee. He goes, "Yankee, where are you?" I said, "I'm at the race shop." "I thought you'd be here." He says, "Jesus Christ." He said, "I'll come get you." Okay. So he came and got me. We drove an hour and a half out into the middle of Texas somewhere, and for the next 3 days, we dug fence post holes. And you know, I was kind of dressed with nice slacks on, you know, and my nice sport coat or something. I'm digging fence post holes in the middle of Texas. And then that weekend, he said, "Come on, I'll ride you home. I got to go to Mid-Ohio." So we hop on his airplane. We fly up to Mid-Ohio, and I'm getting off the plane, and I got to rent a car there to drive back to Pittsburgh. And I said, "Hey, what about my prize money check?" He goes, "Oh, I'll send it to you. Don't worry." That was that, yeah. And then in '86, I drove for Andy Kenepensky in the Machinist Union here at the Speedway in Michigan and a couple other races, 5 or 6 races. Yeah.
Anything about those stories sound familiar, Scott, or has racing changed a lot?
I think racing's changed a lot.
Thank God, huh? Thank God.
Yeah. Hey, I will say AJ's still the same, though.
Right, AJ's still the same, right.
So was it the association with Pat Patrick that led to getting into ownership in IndyCar?
Yeah, so then I bought his team then after that, and you know, kind of got started, and he was kind of phasing out, and I was phasing in, so it made a good plan, and you know, we had a lot of success together, and bought the team at the beginning of '88, and he hung around till the end of '89, so it was good, and I was a young guy then, and we had a lot of success, brought in some great people, you know, added to a pretty good team already, but when you had Emerson Fittipaldi as a driver, and we added Mo Nunn into that on top of it as an engineer, we had a pretty formidable team there in '88 and '89. And we finished second here at the Speedway, second in the championship in '88 and '89. We won the Speedway and won the championship, so it was pretty good.
'94, I believe, was the year you added Michael, and then after that,
Yes.
Jimmy Vassar,
Yes.
and then Zanardi. And I won't say that's when you turned the corner, but certainly.
Yeah, certainly started to have some success there around '96 and '94. We started the team in '90 with Eddie Cheever. So we had Cheever in '90, 91, '92, sprinkled Ari Leyendyk in there in '92, '93. Then just went back to one car with Michael in '94, and then maybe one car for just a little bit. Then went back to 2 cars pretty quick. But then had some wins in '94 with Michael, and then '96 we really started to get hot, and won the championship then in '96, '97, '98, '99. And we're the first people to win the championship 4 times in a row. Then we did it again 4 times in a row. Sometime after that, about, I think, 9, 10, 11, 12 or something. And so it's been a pretty good run with the team. You know, when you're lucky to have drivers like this guy on my left, or Dario Franchitti, or, you know, Dan Weldon. I've been really lucky over the years to have great drivers. It's a hell of a lot easier, ladies and gentlemen, when you have great drivers, believe me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this great driver here and talk to this great driver. Your first meeting with Chip Ganassi.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was an interesting one. I didn't know what to expect. I think Stefan was there too. Stefan Johansson's been my manager since 1999. He wrote it into the first contract I had with his team back then. And I don't know. You kind of going from, Pac West was a fairly average sized team at the time, and really hadn't won too many races or weren't going in the right direction. That team folded up, Toyota and Chip kind of got together, and we were able to, have that first meeting. I think we spoke about money for a few minutes. Chip was pretty stern on that. I think he got a really good deal that year, and for several years after. No, joking. It's
worked out okay for you, hasn't it? I mean,
better than okay.
Thank you.
But, I just remember, going to that team, seeing that facility for the first time, seeing, how that operation worked. And just, for me, it was just my mouth and eyes were just wide open the whole time, just seeing that. But, Chip's got a little kinder, I think, these days. He's a little more sensitive.
Mellowing in my old age, is that it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe getting a bit softer. It doesn't yell at me as much, which is good. But no, the first meeting was pretty seamless and pretty quick, as all ours are typically with negotiation stuff. It happens pretty fast,
Yeah.
I want to drive for his great team, and
we want to have great drivers. So
we have the same goal. We want to win.
Yeah.
Considering your background, any hesitancy at all because of how oval heavy the series was at that time?
Actually, that is a good question, because it was, for me, coming from New Zealand, the first time I'd ever raced on an oval was when I started in Indy Lights in 1999. Had done it for a couple of years. Probably wasn't one of my favorite things to do at the time. And going from kart, the series at the time had a pretty good mix. It's 20 or 22 races. Maybe 8 or 10 of those were ovals. But then in that transition in 2003, going to the IRL and being a 16 or 17 race all oval series, I remember having that conversation with Stefan and just being like, man, I'm not sure this is something I really want to do, but having the opportunity, with Chip at that point, it was a very quick and easy decision. For me, it was a game changer. Changed my whole career. So there was. I think I thought about that for a split second and then was straight in. But I quickly became we loved oval racing. The first race, sure. I think we had in 2003, we won that, which was huge. The first race back at, going to with the IRL at Homestead, and remember racing Gilles de Ferran for the win there pretty hard, and the rest is history.
Racing here, I love asking drivers this question. The magnitude of this place set in at all the first time you take a lap around here?
Yeah,
I know you have work to do pretty quickly, and you get focused on that. But initially, any impressions like that first time in the car here?
Yeah, I think you take it in your stride. I think being a veteran is sometimes harder coming here because you have so many preconceived notions. I think coming here as a rookie, yes, is very daunting, but it's also, for me, it was you didn't really know what was coming. So it was actually being on that fresh side of it and super excited and just, I guess it was all the unknowns. The speed is one thing, the qualifying process, which has changed now to, the race, to the drafting. There were so many things you had to learn that were definitely Indy 500 specific and specific to the circuit. But yeah, getting up to, 245 miles an hour on the straights and qualifying, for me was definitely a whole new barrier. So, it was. I don't know. I just remember it as being so exciting coming here. Driving through the tunnel. Getting the car on the track for the first time. Finally getting up to speed, to having a competitive car, a great race. That whole scenario. I think my first year here was a little phased with. I don't know. I think I had a big crash in Japan. Straight. I think. Well, no, I crashed in Japan and broke my wrist and hands. And TK we'd hit each other and. He had suspension go through his leg, but we had 2 weeks off. They fixed us up, and we were able to race here for the first time. And then, yeah, you're right. I crashed under caution on the front straight, so it wasn't a good end to the day.
Funny how the owner remembers that. Right?
Is it a tough job as an owner to have that checklist? Do you have a checklist when you're bringing a driver into the fold, or is it something with all of your years of experience you feel it when you meet with them?
Well, I think for everybody it's different. For each driver, it's different. You know, if you start treating these guys like, you know, like a cookie cutter, you're going to be, you know, you're gonna a failure. You'll have a failure somewhere. I mean, you have to look at. I try to look at the individual and get to know them, and you know, figure out what their hot buttons are and are not, and what you can talk to them about and what you maybe stay away from talking about. But you know, I think it's a great thing, I can tell you, to bring a new driver to Indianapolis and teach them, you know, all the things about this place. It's a constant. You know, you can probably learn, you know, 75% of what to know about Indianapolis in your first day here, and you'll work on the last 25% the rest of your career. You know, there's a lot to learn here. Everything from the changing weather conditions to the racecraft during the race, to the you know, the endless possibilities of things that happen or can happen during the month of May here. You know, you get so much practice and so much time that you have to be careful not to get lulled into a you know, in a rut. You can get lulled into a rut, really, or you can get on a plateau that you can't get off of. I mean, we've all done that at times, you know, where you get your performance, you know, is going good. You know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, you start to hit a plateau here. And the problem is the fast guy's plateau is there, and you're here, and you go, oh, I guess I'm not there yet, you know. So just all the different things that can come at you as a driver. It's great to have experienced that myself and to pass that knowledge on to guys. And, you know, I'm sure Scott sees that now with his teammate Felix Rosenquist.
A lot of drivers have said how much they enjoyed driving for someone that's been in a race car, regardless of what it was. They say it's a huge advantage, Scott.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, I think, to, you know, even if it's just the simple highs to lows that drivers face, to, you know, the feel of the car or the process of, or you know, as Chip sort of commented on, I think, you know, there's so many variables and trying to keep up to speed with it, but then every driver is so different. You know, that's where I've been lucky, being with Chip for 19 years now, is that I've probably had 25 or more teammates and everybody's process is totally different, and each and every one of them does something better than you. So you have to constantly be trying to chase those small fractions. And, you know, for me, that's probably been the best part. But yeah, you know, having a team owner that has that passion, but also that competitiveness and that strive to want to win, you know, for me, that was the biggest difference going from a mid-running team to, you know, Chip's team, is just the attitude across the whole organization was different. You know, everybody, if you didn't win, then nobody was happy. You know, you're there to only win. Every weekend and every race that we go to is to win. We're not there to, you know, have a top 10 or anything like that, you know. So that definitely changed the way I perceived IndyCar racing when I went from a team like that to finally joining a team that, you know, Chip being a driver and a race winner and all that changed.
To that end of the team, the consistency of having a driver for 18 years, but your structure of your IndyCar team has been awfully consistent over the years, so that's a huge part of your success as well. Yeah,
it started with a guy named Tom Anderson. He was one of my first, probably my first hire when we got the team going, and from Patrick, and then later in the years with Mike Hull, and Mike's been at the helm now for, I don't know, 20 plus years, and you know, I don't know how many wins he's got under his belt, but it's well over 150, I know. And whether it's in the Indy cars or we run a sports car team also out of Indianapolis here. So it's, you know, for me, it's really great to, you know, everybody talks about a team and how much. I just find it so rewarding to be a part of a team of people, all, you know, rowing this. You know, it's a ship. You know, I mean, you're all hand rowing this ship. It seems like, and you're all going in the same direction. And it's I feel like there's 150 people up there in Park 100 where our team is based, and we're all rowing this ship with those big long paddles in the ocean, and we're trying to keep this ship going straight. And it's a cross between that and this like massive arms race that Ganassi and Penske and Michael Andretti were all locked into this like all-out war where we're kind of friends, Monday through Friday. And on
He liked you enough to give you a ride on a scooter recently.
Yes, he did. He gave me a ride on a scooter recently, but on the weekends we want to rip each other's eyeballs out. But on the during the week we all have a keen interest in IndyCar racing, so it's a lot of fun.
Funny about the team concept, Scott, a few years ago, we, turn announcer, went over and helped our pit guys with a pre-race show at Barber. And Dario, I think, was starting 19th as your teammate. And I said, Dario's rolling off 19th. I said, that doesn't sound right to say because that doesn't happen very often. And he said, listen, if I'm going to start 19th, this is a team I don't mind starting 19th with because I know we can get to the front. And that's going to be huge for a driver to have that kind of confidence in the entire organization.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely on no weekend you want to be starting 19th or worse. I've done it. We did it at Mid-Ohio, but and that example, I think we started 22nd and ended up winning the race. Sometimes you got to be lucky too, and it's good to have a great team to maybe pick that scenario. But yeah, I think the through the course of my career, the times I've learned the most are those days where you've had the wind knocked out of you. You're maybe not having the best time. But you have that group of people around you that, we've been there, we've won, we know how to do it, and it's just being able to have that quick reset. And Dario's been a huge part of this team in as far as being a driver and winning all these races to now where he's is helping in another role with with Felix and myself. But that's what it takes. It takes this depth, but it's people that are proven winners and have the attitude to make sure it happens. But yeah, if you're going to have any team, this is the team you want. That's got you back. So
Chip, you had already had plenty of success at IndyCar. Sports cars became part of the portfolio. Then NASCAR. The allure of that, wanting to take on those forms of racing, and then the success that you've had in those series has been incredible as well.
Yeah, thanks. It's people say to me, what do you like more? Which type of racing do you like more? And it's not the type of racing. It's racing period that I like. I love what happens between the green flag and the checkered flag. There's this game of chess you're playing that you slow down to a normal, 33 1/3 speed, that you just sort of slow it all down and you're playing this chess game with drivers and engines and engineers and pit stops and pit crew members and strategy and fuel mileage, and you have all these sort of variables going on back here, and you're trying to sift it down into figuring out at the end of the day who's going to finish second in this race, because you got to be in front of that guy, and that's what we do week in and week out. We take each race, whether it's in NASCAR, in sports cars, in Indy cars, and we just take each day one day at a time and try to do the best we can do that particular day. And you look at all the variables. It's almost like, I hate to keep talking these metaphors, but it's like, I think sometimes it's like dumping that puzzle out of the can on the table, and it's whoever can put that puzzle together the fastest is going to win the race. And that's what it's like these days in this sport, because everybody has, the depth of talent today in this series is incredible. I mean, there are more cars that can win here than ever before, I think. And it says a lot about the series, it says a lot about the job they're doing up at the IndyCar office, and it just says a lot about the sport right now. It's pretty healthy, I think.
Do you feel a little like maybe you're a dad with a lot of cool cars and a lot of kids, because you have cars in NASCAR and sports cars, and these guys are saying, hey, I enjoy IndyCar,
they're like children. They're like your children. You love them all the same. Some need a little more love than others at times. Yeah.
It's got to be cool for you as a driver to have opportunities, perhaps within the team, to try other forms of racing.
Yeah, it definitely makes the transition a lot easier. You know, I think for me I think I first started with the sports car program actually in 2004 at Daytona for the first time, and with
You
Scott.
won it first time out, didn't you? The 24-hour.
No.
No?
No. Remember that was the one where we had the fogging windscreen and we had to tape some like fabric to a pole because the defroster wouldn't work and we had to go down the straights wiping off all
Blame it on the windscreen.
the windscreen, and then we drilled a bunch of holes in it, and then the car filled up with water, and it was that was a tough one.
Okay.
With I think it was with Pruitt and Max Pappas, but yeah, for me, I've been lucky enough to be part of this team to win Daytona. I think 3 times, twice in the prototype, and then in the GT just a couple of years ago, last year. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Got to do a car swap with Jamie McMurray. He got the good end of the deal on that though. He got to drive the IndyCar at Barber Motorsports Park, and then I got to drive by myself around Talladega. So that wasn't much fun. But we've tried looking at doing some of the NASCAR thing for tests and things a few years ago. But I think the problem now is the testing rules are so tight, and cars and especially the programs that are running side by side, it's really hard to get into those things. But yeah, without Chip, I wouldn't have had the opportunities to run some of these great races. Going to Le Mans for the first time, being on the podium there in 2016, Chip winning that race. So many great experiences with having that crossover platform. Whereas with most other teams, you just wouldn't have the opportunity.
So now, numbers-wise, I know that you're concerned about winning. And I know that statistics are something you'll reflect upon someday when you're done driving. But for those of you that aren't aware, I want to share the numbers. And they're right here, and they don't lie for sure. It's absolutely incredible. 308 starts, 108 top threes. That's 35% of the time he's in the top 3. 51% of the time he's in the top 5. 157 times he's been in the top 5. 46% of the time he's led a race. He's led 46% of the laps in which he's competed in. Top 10s, 72% of 308 starts he's finished in the top 10. He's been running at the finish 261 times. Those are absolutely staggering numbers.
Not bad.
So just reaffirming, he was a good hire.
Yes, he was.
It worked out
Still
okay.
is, yes.
How do you feel about the phrase "the Iceman"? I mean, those of us in media have all used it, and it is a term of endearment. And I think whether you, I think, connect to this or not, the thing that has, I'm been fortunate enough to cover every one of your IndyCar Series starts, and the thing that has always impressed me is your ability to get a top 5 maybe when the win's not going to be there. Not saying that you don't push, because you do. We all know you want to win.
Yeah, the name thing, I don't know where or how it really started. I've been called a lot worse things, so, the Iceman's fine with me. I think I was called the Phantom there for a little bit because I would actually not turn up for a lot of things, but I kind of seemed to mature and break through that stage in my life. And then, now it's more about getting, trolled on social media from Kimi Räikkönen fans saying that, he's the real Iceman. But I think we actually did a check on it, and I was labeled the Iceman first, so... At least I'm going to say that now anyway. Now it's a fact. But no, I think it's for me. I think it's just my natural way of approaching a race weekend. I love racing. It's been my passion. There's a lot of things that go on outside of a race that show the persona maybe of the person. I think IndyCar is very lucky that they show a lot of that, the different personalities of the drivers, and our series is very diverse. I think I'm kind of at one end, and then you got Alio, the dancer, up here in a different category. So it's fun to see that and mix with these people. But I think on the track it's kind of how we roll as a team, I think, as well, and it's kind of brushed off on me too.
At one point in championship season, I think you led something like 343 consecutive laps over, 2 or 3 races or so. When you get on a run like that, you probably can't get to the next track fast enough, can you? Yeah,
you surely don't want it to stop. Yeah, it's. I think it was Kansas maybe, and then to Richmond or something, and we led like all the laps at both, and then obviously it came to an end at some point. But those are times where. It's also the times when you're winning 5 or 6 races a year too. Some of that has changed. I think with the competitiveness of the series, even though most of the teams are actually pretty much the same, It was just the shift in I think that's where this team has always been very strong, is when there's been a technical shift or a car change or an engine change. This is the team to be with. They catch up so quickly. They're very open-minded to go with the change. And I think, in those periods of time, even with this iteration of car, from the Aero kit, we were one of the first teams to win the championship. Going to this unified Aero kit, we were one of the first teams to win with it. So we've had a really good progression, and for me, they make it easy on me.
Is it as tough to win in this series now, Chip, as it has ever been?
I think so for sure. Yeah. I mean, the engine companies. You got Honda and Chevrolet in an all-out war. You got Penske with Chevrolet, and myself and Michael with Honda, and then I got to beat the other Hondas too. So they're it's tougher than ever. But you know what they say: the toughest competitions invite the most competitive teams, and that's what I like about the guys I get to work day in and day out with, is they thrive at those kind of questions.
Over the past few years, the series has worked very, very hard toward date equity. We've lost some events and gained some events because that's just the nature of things for whatever the reason. But that's awfully important for you as a race team in preparing for a season, to know that you're going to go back, because there's a lot of data you need to pour over, and it just continues to build. Plus, you build a fan base that way.
Yes, I mean, I think it's nice to see how the series has progressed. Now, we went from being an all-oval series back when Scott got started. I think we all knew that, at some point it would the pendulum would swing the other way, and I mean, the last thing anybody wants to do is when you've been in this business as long as Scott and I have, the last thing we want to do is go to another race. But the one thing we'll jump at is to go to another great event, and that's what a lot of these races now are, great events. We just came out of Long Beach, California, a few weeks ago, and Birmingham, Alabama, St. Petersburg, Florida. These are big events for these regions, and you get so many people and big crowds and great excitement around the entire weekend of activities. It's black tie events on Wednesday and Thursday, and sponsor events Friday, Saturday, and people falling all over you on Sunday and Saturday. It's just great. So it's a great thing to have all these great events to go to week in and week out.
And for the driver, Scott, a lot of series tout being fan-friendly. I think this one actually delivers on that. And I think each and every year there are new and innovative ways to get more fans closer to you guys. And I think everyone in the paddock, everyone in the series embraces the relationship that you develop with your fans, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely very open. The hands-on sort of appeal that I think IndyCar has is far different from anything else we see. I think that the reminder of that is, having someone like Felix coming for the first time, who's, raced in Japan and, Super Formula, Super GTs, raced in Formula E, and many other series, DTM, in Europe. And to come here is like, wow, you guys do so many fan appreciation things, as far as autograph sessions to events, where a lot of other series don't do that. And I think, it is key to obviously the growth, but as Chip was saying and touching on that, these events, they're making sure that they're going to areas and demographics that are going to be rewarding for everyone. And then also stability is key. If you look at St. Pete or Long Beach, Long Beach, I think, almost had another record year of, 200,000 plus people for the weekend. So it's, also it's hard with this new transition of generations too, right? And trying to dig into that and understand that as well. But I think with IndyCar and their staff and the manufacturers and the promoters that we have throughout, all these races are definitely pushing hard and making sure that it's going to continue to grow.
Before we get to questions from the audience, one more question for Chip from the business side. Long-time association with Target. The challenges of moving on from that and the relationship you were able to develop with PNC Bank.
Yeah, just, had a great relationship with Target for many years. I followed them through 4 different CEOs, I think, and finally they decided to move in another direction. I can't blame them. They had a great 26-year run, I guess, in IndyCar racing. So I can't complain about that. It was the best sponsor ever. But having said that, and now having PNC Bank on the car is a dream come true. It's my my hometown bank that started in Pittsburgh, and I sort of grew up with them, and they grew up with me as a banker, a banking customer, and so it was just sort of a natural thing to begin to speak to PNC when it was time to replace Target, and they've come in, full throttle and really having a good time at it, I think, and so and they love Indianapolis, they love the Indiana market, I know, and they do a bang up job here, so go down to your local PNC branch and tell them you know me, and you'll get 1% off on your savings. Or you'll get more percent added or whatever.
Yeah, they have a pretty
Give
cool
you more
poster.
interest. Yeah. Or
There's a
lower
pretty cool
rates.
poster wishing Scott the best of luck at the one down here on Crawfordsville Road. And NTT Data has stepped up. Too,
Yes,
big
yes,
time.
and NTT Data stepped up as well. Yes, and we're happy to have introduced them to the sport and brought them into the series sponsorship as well. So that's quite a feather in our cap. We're pretty proud of.
Okay, folks, your turn. Raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you.
Good. Starting one close to me.
I work in mental health, and one of the questions I have is after a wreck like you had here in Indy, what is that like mentally coming back from one of those wrecks?
Well, Chip can probably speak on this too. It's, yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
I don't know. To give a straight up answer, it's never easy. I think that's the problem. And that continues even on a race weekend, and having done that on say a Friday or Saturday, and then having to get straight back into a car. That's probably the hardest transition. I think with sometimes like the Indy 500 here, and then we're racing Detroit, the following week, you still have that lingering situation. But for me, I break it down into different categories of struggle. And for me is when I make a mistake and I lose the car by losing control of it. And that's the one that lingers with me the most. Having been involved in a crash like the one here with Jay a few years back, those don't seem to linger as much just because it's just one of those chance things. I was very happy to walk out of that. I remember looking up and seeing a whole half of the back of a car, and I was like, wow, I hope that person's okay. And then stepping out of my car and seeing it's the half of my car. So it works in very strange ways. I think, especially on ovals. Ovals are you have to be very mentally strong and have faith in the car and understand that you can push it. A lot of times, like I was talking about earlier, if you go slower, the car just feels horrible. So you kind of have to get over that hump, and if you have accident like that, it can really linger and be a bit of a pain.
Yeah, I think too. Like from my perspective that day, Scott flew 336 feet or something in the air, practically from turn 1 to the exit of turn 2, and I get over to the hospital. I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he wanted to borrow Dario's sunglasses because he wanted to have some sunglasses on. I remember, and I said, "You sure you're okay?" He said, "I'm fine. I said, "Okay." He said, "My ankle hurts a little bit." Okay, great. But then I think the thing that and like you said, he was over it quickly. But then when you go home, and your daughters are there, you see your daughters his kids for the first time, and they say, "Dad, are you okay? You could have been hurt." I think that's when it probably hits you a little harder, or when you can talk about that better than me, I guess.
Yeah. The pain thing is when the adrenaline wears off. That's horrible because it feels pretty bad. I didn't know I'd actually fractured my ankle in that crash. I kind of walked home or to the car and then kind of went for dinner, and then I'm like, man, my leg's getting really sore. But yeah, I don't know. Still for me though, the transition of the home life, with Poppy and Tilly is still that situation. Once you get in the car, for me, I still have the same triggers, right glove before the left, get in the car from the left side. Those things kind of all start again, and I really don't think about those things. It's just about how to go fast again. But the one is the losing control of the car is the one that lingers the most.
Who else? Okay. So the cars are obviously a lot different today, but Chip, how is the Indy 500 or IndyCar racing different today than it was back in 1982 when you were running?
Well, I think there are a lot more professional teams. You know, in those days there were 2 or 3 teams, you know, that were good, and everybody else was kind of hanging on. Where I think here there's probably, you know, 12 or 15 cars that can win now on any weekend. That's probably the first thing. Secondly, there's a lot more emphasis put on safety today, you know, which back in those days it really wasn't. I mean, I cringe when I look at some of the cars I used to drive and think, oh my gosh, you know, I can't believe, you know, these drivers today. I wouldn't blame them; they would never get in those cars, you know. And so I think it's changed in terms of safety. It's become something that is, I think, more affordable. You know, some people may think it's very expensive to go IndyCar racing, and it is, but it's more affordable today than it used to be relative to everything else, I think. You know, back in the day, and there weren't as many people with the racing knowledge that there are today. You know, there was a small group of drivers, you know, Mario and Unsers and Gordy and Rutherford and those guys. They sort of had a small group of people that came up in that Firestone Goodyear era of the 60s that they had all their information was pretty closely held. And I think over time with more teams coming in, that information disseminated down, and there's quite a book of knowledge up and down the pit lane out there today, you know, or the teams that are there. I think there were 23 cars here today that, you know, then in each one of those teams, there's 3 or 4 or 5 engineers, you know, mechanics that have been in the sport for a long time, young people coming along that are interested in the sport. And so there's the knowledge base is deeper than it was when I was in it.
All right, we're going here, and then I'm coming down the middle. So,
yeah, this is for Chip. Being an owner now and a boss, and looking back on that young driver named Chip Ganassi from 1982, if you were going to go back and tell him or evaluate him, how good of a prospect was he?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, he didn't realize the opportunity that he had, I think. You know, like I was one of those drivers that I had a lot of natural talent. You know, I didn't have to work at it real hard. I mean, I'd raced so many different things as a kid growing up. It came very naturally to me. So when I had to work at it, you know, it kind of wasn't that much fun anymore, you know. And so I would tell that guy to work a little harder at it, and you'll last a lot longer as a driver. But I seem to be a little better as an owner than I was a driver, so maybe that was the right thing to have happen.
This question's for Chip or Scott. I understand this is comparing apples and oranges and there are budget constraints, but there was a 13-second difference at COTA between Formula One and Indy cars. Do you ever wish, looking forward to the next iteration of IndyCar, we could tighten up that time within budgets and make that difference a little more narrow?
Yeah, you know, I think it's, you know, you just run to a set of rules, right? I think the speed is fairly irrelevant in a lot of ways, as long as the you know, I think what a lot of us are really intrigued by is the show. You know, I think if you look back into maybe the 80s, you know, people winning the Indy 500 by 2 or 3 laps. You know, now it's, you know, so tight that it's coming down to fractions of seconds. But yeah, it's an easy, I say easy, it's an easy step. You just need more power and more grip, right? So we know how to do it, we know how to achieve it, but does that affect the racing? And I think, you know, with Formula One, that's definitely very prominent. You know, the cars are fast, but, you know, by the time you watch turn 1, you pretty much know the outcome of the race. So I know with, you know, the 2020 rules or 21, I think are changing for the engine horsepower. You know, it goes up about 150 horsepower. That will change that, and then the tires are a big difference. So I guess what I'm saying, as long as the racing's good, I'm happy. The speed is kind of irrelevant.
You know, when we were at COTA. For those of you who don't know, this it was Circuit of the Americas is COTA in Austin, Texas. We were there in the beginning of March or something, and you know, I don't think at any time over the weekend did anybody ask me that question? You know, say, oh, well, how come you guys are slower than Formula One cars around here? You know, I mean, it's just about you're not racing somebody that was there 6 months ago. You're racing the people that are there today, and you know, you just want to beat them, and that's the task at hand. It's not about, you know, it's like I said, nobody even mentioned that to me while I was down there all weekend, and you know, it's just like Scott said, it's just a matter of the power level and the grip level, and you know, we can call Firestone and say, hey, make a stickier tire, and we'll go faster around there. I don't know if that's going to make the race any better or not, is what he's saying. So I thought it was a great race until the last, till one of our cars had caused a yellow, and it screwed my other car that was running third at the time, and we ended up in the back. So, but it was a good day. We thought it was a good race there, you know. So it's not about comparing us to any other form of racing. It's who you're racing that particular day.
Okay.
I have a question for Chip. You've had so many great drivers over the years that have made an impact on the sport, but I often think of the one that we lost, Tony Renna, and just what you saw in him and his potential and what that loss meant.
Yeah, you know, he was a guy that had come up through racing. I felt, you know, had all the credentials to be a part of our team. And sadly, he was a part of our team for one racing session. I mean, he was unfortunately lost his life in the very first time he was in the car. It was unquestionably the saddest day of my racing career. And I just, you know, I knew him, but I feel like I had never got to know him. I never got to know him as a race driver, really. You know, he was somebody that came up the hard knocks way through racing, and his family worked hard to get him to this level of the sport. They got him there, and he was ready. And unfortunately, the good Lord took him from us. It was his time, I guess. And it was just a sad, sad day. And he was a great young man.
Who else?
Both of you guys have driven many practice laps around here. What's the difference? Practice days, there's a smattering of a crowd, but come out Sunday, race morning, what's that? Does that throw off any of your points or anything like that?
It's good to see, that's for sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like I think the parade laps and sometimes under caution you see some strange stuff. You know, people by the fence or maybe clothing coming off or. I don't know, but for me, the you know, the tradition of late where you're kind of all, you know, lined up together and you do the first, you know, 2 or 3 laps kind of waving at the crowd is pretty special. But yeah, the track almost, you know, shrinks. You know, I think going into turn 1, you know, on some of those practice days where you're at very high speeds, you know, it feels very different to, you know, that first few laps around the speedway come race day. You know, it's just I don't know, it's crazy. The senses are just alive, you know, and not just for the drivers, but for everybody. There's just so much going on. But yeah, you do see some strange stuff.
I remember my first year here, you know, people say, oh, be careful because on race day the place changes, the way it looks. And I didn't think it changes much in look as much as when you would go, I vividly remember in 1982, I vividly remember going through turn 2 over there by the turn 2 suites and smelling like steaks on the grill. And I mean, here I am blasting around the corner at 200 miles an hour, you know, and I'm going, oh my God, that steak smells so good. You know, it just, you know, that's what, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, hang on, sorry. Come right back to you. We had one right here.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. A couple of questions that Chip, I want you to know, and Scott. We've been with the festival parade for a zillion years, and we really appreciate the fact that you guys make yourself available
Thank you.
to the city and to the fans. And that might be a day that you could kick back maybe. But we appreciate the fact that you're downtown.
No,
And,
we appreciate everybody's effort for that day. It's definitely spectacular, and that's what makes Indy, you know, is that tradition, and that's it's a very special day
And
for sure.
we understand what you say, Chip, about, and Scott, about Long Beach. It's been around a long time. First time I went there was 1980, and it's a pretty special event. Question is, on road racing, both Chip and Scott, I'd like to know your favorite track of the road races that IndyCar competes in this year, or whatever year you like.
That's easy. The next road race we win is my new favorite track.
I like that one too. The I don't know. I loved Watkins Glen. You know that had always been a favorite for me. Pardon? Mid Ohio too. Yeah, Mid Ohio hasn't been too good to me lately. I don't know. I need to turn that one around a bit.
He went on a tear there about 4 years in a row, 4 or 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
He won, and now we can't hit our ass with either hand there. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. I ran at Mid Ohio, sure, and Watkins Glen. Yeah, I like both those places. Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you for a wonderful presentation tonight. Scott, I'm going to throw this at you, and we're going to go outside maybe your comfort level a little bit. I hope not too badly. You mentioned Helio earlier, and the price of celebrity is being in demand. And I know you have worked some TV shows. I believe you've been working some reality shows, and obviously TV commercials and all that. On the racetrack, I know it's grueling, all that. Is TV a little bit more grueling sometimes because of schedules and all that? And by the way, I worked in television production. I know how long it takes to do some of these things. But can you tell us any particular stories about anything that you have worked outside the racetrack and TV production?
I've told Chip a couple of times I actually get paid to do the media side, and I race for free, which he doesn't seem to like too often. It's tough, you know. For me, I'm just not natural at it. You know, it's something that I have got a little bit better, I think, over doing it, you know, a few times. But I don't know. The recent one I did was probably the American Ninja Warrior, which looked much easier on TV than what it is in reality. But yeah, I think. Yeah, that was extremely tough. But I think, you know, the production side, as you're talking about, you know, that American Ninja Warrior, where you rock up and just see how big of a deal that is, and the production that goes into it, and the days of building that program, and then how the show rolls on. It goes, you know, all through the night. But no, I can't say I've got too many. You know, I think Dan Weldon and I, we had some pretty funny TV shows, you know, back in the day. But it's, you know, it's all just banter stuff. But nothing I've done too crazily, I don't think. So I've been lucky on that side. Yeah. Thank you.
Chip, I have a couple questions. Number one, what's your tire bill for the year? And when will we see Carl Larson here?
Okay, we'll see Kyle Larson here when I'm overloaded with sponsors that want to have more drivers here. You know, this is you know, I get that question a lot. When's Larson coming? When's Larson coming? You know, hey, it still takes, you know, the right effort and the right team. And I'll be damned if I want to show up with Larson here and have a half put together team. You know, I have to have everything right if we're going to be there. And to have everything right, you got to have the right amount of money for starters. And so until that's right, I'm not going to even think about it, and neither is he. So that's number one. Number two, what's my tire bill a year? I think is about, in IndyCar racing, I want to venture to say is, let's see, for 2 cars, I want to say it's about $1,900,000. Yeah.
Bill, you ready to pick up that Larson car money?
I'd love to have him here, believe me. You know, nothing I'd like more than to have him and Kurt here as teammates to this guy. But it's, you know, it's the realities of the world, you know, that fall in on you at times. Yeah.
I'd just like to say it's a joy to sit here and listen to you all and have you all speak to us tonight. It really is quite special. And I think Turner John, let's ask a question.
Yeah, Scott, you alluded to, how many teammates you've had in the last 19 years. It's pretty interesting. I'm sure you've had fair share of rookie teammates, but I was kind of curious as to what both your thoughts are on Felix Rosenquist, and if kind of having maybe, he's a 27-year-old, he's been through a lot of different racing, if having someone with a lot of experience is helpful in a rookie. I'm sure it is, but kind of your thoughts, kind of like Wickens last year, he comes in and has like a wealth of experience and maybe a little bit more of a head start.
Yeah, I'd say, my feeling is with Felix, it's better to get a guy that, it's easier to, Roger Penske said this years ago, and it's a great quote. He said, it's easier to slow these guys down than speed them up. And that's kind of the attitude that I think we've taken with Felix. We've got to slow him down a little bit, so, you saw him at Long Beach, for instance, down in the runoff there a couple times in practice and qualifying and what have you. And I said, hey, when we get to Indianapolis, don't try to go down in the runoff there. There's no runoff there, so he's got to slow him down a little bit. But when it came time to hire somebody new, I called nobody else than this guy right here. I said, hey, what do you think of this guy? And he'll tell you.
Yeah, I've known Felix probably for 5 or 6 years, but yeah, I think it's been really refreshing actually, because a lot of the time you kind of get stuck in the ecosystem of doing the same thing, and I'm calling IndyCar racing in general, where Felix came from different formulas that approach weekends totally different. So I think for me and the team in general, even if it's simple things on pit lane or the approach that we use or the way we even look at data or timing segments, he's had a very different outset on that. So, and then especially coming from Formula E in the last year where they did it all in one day, has changed a lot too. But yeah, he's got a ton of knowledge. The guy's, as Chip said, is super fast, super capable. He's a guy that can, be fast. He can save fuel. He can, take care of the tires. He knows what the car needs. So for me, I've been very lucky to have some amazing teammates throughout my career, and he's definitely going to be a guy to look at. He's got big things coming.
This is for Scott. Has anyone given you any specific advice in driving, or have you learned something while your career has been progressing that you take into every race that you kind of keep in the back of your mind?
I think for me, it's always just keeping an open mind. I think the time you think you know everything is probably the time to give up. For me, I think every weekend you're constantly learning. And that advice actually came from Kenny Smith, who was, still races actually at the age, he's in his 70s now. He just won the Formula 5000 championship in New Zealand and Australia. But he was a guy I looked up to and helped me in my junior categories in New Zealand and racing. And I think even at that point, maybe early on, I at 13, 14, I started in Formula cars. And when I would start to finish his sentences for him occasionally on how to drive, he'd be like, hey man, you haven't seen anything right now. You must always remember that you're going to always be learning. Whether it's the weather conditions, the cars, the aero kits, the tires, everything is constantly changing. So you have to keep up to speed and go with the change. If you don't go with the change, man, you're going to be left behind.
Chip, do you have separate crews or different crews for the different series for the IndyCars and the GTs? And it's great to see you back at Road America where you belong.
Yeah. No, we love Road America, but the short answer is yes. They're completely separate pit crews, teams, completely separate everything. I think only Mike Hall and myself cross-pollinate between the two series. Yes.
Chip, your first race was my first race here, and I think I remember you saying a big fist pump as you finished your rookie year.
Yes, I think you're right. Well, I know it was a big fist pump when I qualified.
Okay.
I can tell you that. Yeah, I was pretty happy then.
And yes. Only a comment, Scott. Have you had any desire at all to hop in one of Larson's sprint cars?
I've actually driven a sprint car, and I'm not sure Chip knows about that. But
yeah, I'm not sure I need to.
Yeah. It was a wingless one. It was at Putnamville, but I think it was like 10 years ago. But it just felt like driving an engine around. It had more power than you could do anything with.
Right.
I remember the first time I was going down the straight and I was just on the limiter because it was wheel spinning so hard. So it's I don't know, I love dirt racing. You know, my parents were very deep into dirt racing in you know, those early years. I go to the Chili Bowl whenever I can to watch it. I think it's one of the best form of racing that you'll ever see. It's very exciting. But right now I'll stick to what I'm good at. Maybe one day I'll get to go in a sprint car. It doesn't look like I'm going to get to have a go.
Okay, before we wrap up, Scott, we'll ask you what's on the agenda. We have some testing between now and the time we get back here for the IndyCar Grand Prix.
Yeah, this weekend actually we have the Indy Mutt Strut. So Emma and myself are co-chair for that. So make sure you come out, bring your dog. We're going to walk the track, which is great for Indy Humane. But then, yeah, we test Monday on the road course. And then we convert back, obviously. Actually, no, we stay in road course configuration until we come back the following week. So we have simulation days. Honda actually have a facility here in Indianapolis that we utilize every week to run at circuits that are upcoming or previous ones to, you know, help correlate the tires and things like that, which, you know, simulation has become a very important part of the business with the lack of testing that we have now, or on-track testing. Whether it's rig stuff, tunnel, or the in-driver loop situation that we use out in Brownsburg. So that, and then we'll be back here for the Grand Prix, and then straight into, well, we have Mother's Day, and then straight into the 500.
So speaking of the 500, a question for each of you to answer, and then I'll close. How much time surpasses during the course of a year before you start thinking about the Indianapolis 500?
It's immediate.
It's immediate.
It's immediate. You know, as soon as you finish this race, you're like, you know, how you're constantly thinking of how you could have done that different, what you need to improve on, and that follows through the whole year. It never stops here. It's a vicious cycle that continues to haunt you sometimes. But I think, you know, that's what it takes to win at this place. It's extremely tough.
Yeah, we've certainly had a lot of success here, but at the same time, I've lost this race more than we've won it, and I can tell you how many times I've walked away thinking, damn it, I have to wait another year for this before I can get back here and have another shot at the Borg Warner, you know. I mean, it just, it's such a letdown after this race when you don't win, or you almost, especially if you're having a competitive day and you don't win. It's just heartbreaking. And so we've known the ups of it, we've known the downs, and it's immediate. You think, oh my God, I got to wait another 11 months to get back here.
So by a show of applause, who thinks these two have earned their rightful places among the greatest that have ever competed here? Thank you both very much. Autographs over here to our left, and thank you all for coming. Look forward to seeing you soon. Good luck in May, guys.